Ozzy Osbourne once dubbed himself the Prince of Darkness. Critics weren't so kind, they labeled him the spawn of Satan and the Antichrist. He shocked the world by biting the head off a bat and mocking religious leaders. But his story went far beyond these infamous moments. With Ozzy, darkness wasn't just a persona, it consumed him, and darkness didn't merely haunt him, it eventually destroyed him. This is the tragic story his family wishes remained untold. On July 5, 2025, the United Kingdom was buzzing with anticipation. It was the final tour of Ozzy Osbourne's career, a long-awaited return after 2 decades in Los Angeles. His wife had been preparing for his homecoming, but that wasn't all. There was another, more secretive plan they had been working on together, a plan that many found unsettling. We'll get to that later. Despite everything, Ozzy was eager to reunite with his former bandmates from Black Sabbath one last time, but age had taken its toll. At 76, Ozzy wasn't the energetic performer he once was. More than that, he was sick. His health had been deteriorating for years, largely due to his own actions. In 2007, he was diagnosed with Parkinsonian syndrome. Then in 2019, the diagnosis was Parkinson's disease. His hands trembled uncontrollably. Yet Ozzy was determined to give his best on stage. He hired a rehabilitation expert and, after nearly 7 years of avoiding intense physical activity, he pushed himself hard through brutal training sessions. The thought of gripping his guitar, feeling the roar of the crowd, and sharing the stage with his bandmates fueled his resolve. This wasn't the first time he had fought through his illness for a performance. In 2020, his condition worsened dramatically. Tremors robbed him of control over his arms, his legs stiffened painfully, and falls became frequent, one nearly fatal. We'll share that story later. Even in those dark times, Ozzy was determined to recover quickly. He feared disappointing his fans. Throughout it all, his family stood by his side. His wife Sharon took on the role of primary caregiver, managing his medical care, something she'd become all too familiar with. As you'll soon discover, Sharon stood by Ozzy's side, helping him manage his medication and undergo deep brain stimulation therapy in 2021, which eased some of the Parkinson's symptoms he struggled with. Remarkably, his voice remained strong and unaffected, allowing him to perform at the 2022 Commonwealth Games. That powerful voice was essential, not only for that event, but also for his upcoming reunion with Black Sabbath. But the stakes were even higher for his farewell concert. When July 5th finally arrived, Ozzy was electric, though not like he was in his youth. Back then, he could move wildly on stage, igniting the crowd. Now, he mostly sat, clapping along when he had to. Still, his performance was outstanding, and the audience loved every moment. He was back in the UK and seemingly here to stay, but his family's hopes were bittersweet. They believed they still had time with him. Despite the severity of his illness, Ozzy continued to fight, showing a fierce will to live. Yet, on July 22, 2025, Ozzy passed away. The family announced his death, but remained silent about where or how it happened. Was this secrecy normal, or did it raise suspicion? After Ozzy's farewell concert, a startling revelation came to light. He and Sharon had made an end-of-life pact. Since 2007, they agreed that if either of them developed Alzheimer's, their family would carry out a pre-arranged euthanasia plan. According to their instructions, they would be taken to an assisted suicide facility in Switzerland. Could it be that Ozzy had Alzheimer's, and that his family helped him end his suffering? Or was there something darker at play? Some wondered if his death was part of a sinister ritual. Ozzy called himself the Prince of Darkness and embraced a demonic stage persona. He ran, screamed, and acted wildly, earning the title of the Madman of Rock. Christian groups accused him of devil worship, labeling him an agent of Satan who corrupted youth. They saw him as a harmful influence on teenagers. But did Ozzy care? Not at all. He reveled in their accusations, leaning into the role they painted for him. His lyrics were full of defiance and mockery aimed at those Christian leaders. Then, things began to take a disturbing turn. On New Year's Eve, 1983, a Canadian teenager named James Jollymore was listening to Bark at the Moon, Ozzy Osbourne's third studio album, when he felt something strange stirring inside him. Every time James heard the song, it was as if something was whispering to him. That night the whisper turned into a dark command. Grabbing a knife, James encountered a woman and her two sons. In a terrifying moment, he attacked them. By the time it was over, the woman and her children were stabbed to death. James claimed the song had driven him to it. James wouldn't be the only one to make such a claim. In 1986, Mr. and Mrs. McCollum shocked the world by suing Ozzy Osbourne, accusing him of causing their son's death. The public knew Ozzy was wild, but murder, that seemed unfathomable. Or was it? There was an incident involving his wife, but we'll get to that later. Back in 1980, Ozzy released a song called Suicide Solution on his debut album, Blizzard of Oz. It was a hit, but some believed parts of the song encouraged suicide. The McCollums were convinced. Their son, John McCollum, had been listening to the song before he took his own life. They argued in court that Suicide Solution contained subliminal and backward messages, pushing listeners toward suicide, citing lyrics like "suicide is the only way out" as proof. Ozzy denied the accusations, and the court sided with him. But neither the court nor Ozzy could have predicted what was coming next. Just 4 years later, he faced another lawsuit. Two young Americans, Michael Waller and Harold Hamilton, had also taken their lives while listening to the same song. Their families blamed Ozzy. Still, Ozzy maintained his innocence. He explained that the song was about the alcohol-related death of singer Bon Scott and was meant as a warning against the slow suicide of alcoholism, not an encouragement to end one's life. Few believed him. Some suspected that Ozzy was sacrificing the souls of his young fans in a sinister ritual. After all, people thought he had done it before. When Ozzy was fired from Black Sabbath due to reasons largely of his own making, his life took a darker turn. He spiraled downward, though we'll share more on that later. Eventually, he emerged from the abyss and signed his first solo record deal in 1981 with CBS Records. It was a major breakthrough, but Ozzy had something else in mind. At a ceremony meant to symbolize peace, he brought doves to release into the air for the CBS executives. Suddenly, in a shocking move, he bit the head off one of the doves. Blood sprayed, and the executives were horrified. They knew Ozzy was wild, but this was beyond what they expected. Security was called to escort him out, as if to cement the moment. Ozzy grabbed another dove and bit its head off. That unforgettable act left the executives and the world in stunned silence. What drove Ozzy to such madness? That story is coming up next. As wild as that moment was, it wouldn't be the last time Ozzy bit the head off an animal. The next incident was even stranger. On January 20th, 1982, Ozzy was performing at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium in Des Moines, Iowa. The crowd was electric, completely on his side and going wild. In the middle of the chaos, Ozzy started tossing raw meat into the audience. Things got crazier when a fan threw something back a bat. Ozzy grabbed the bat and bit its head off, but just before he could finish, the bat bit him back. Ozzy had thought it was a toy bat. Mark Neal, a 17-year-old fan who had thrown it on stage, believed he had brought a dead bat to the concert. The whole episode was bizarre. Right after the show, Ozzy went straight to get a rabies vaccination. That moment became one of the defining legends of Ozzy's career, cementing his dark, wild persona. The incident was so iconic that in 2019, to celebrate the 37th anniversary, Ozzy released a plush bat toy with a detachable head on his personal web store. Fans loved it, and the toy sold out almost immediately. But fame and quirky memorabilia weren't the only things Ozzy faced. In 2019, something terrible happened. Its roots stretched all the way back to 2003, much like the time he bit the dove's head off. Something drove Ozzy to lose control in 2003. That year, climbed into his all-terrain vehicle and rampaged through his garden. By then, Ozzy was riding high on success. It's a reality TV show. The Osbournes revealed a softer family man side of him that shocked many. The show was such a hit that it sparked a wave of imitators and helped launch a new era of celebrity reality TV. But Beneath the surface, that familiar dark force inside, Ozzy was stirring raging free, and it wasn't just TV keeping Ozzy in the spotlight. His music was still going strong. In 2003, he released a duet with Kelly that became a serious contender for the UK's coveted Christmas #1 single. That December, he was back in the UK with his family. At their sprawling 150-acre Victorian estate in Jordan's, Buckinghamshire, the estate served as a peaceful retreat, a place to relax, unwind, and escape the chaos of Hollywood. Ozzy usually cherished these moments of relaxation, especially when he could ride his Yamaha Banshee on a TV notorious for being nearly uncontrollable. At high speeds, it was hardly the safest choice for someone with Ozzy's history of wild behavior and recklessness. On December 8, 2003, Ozzy was pushing that TV hard. Maybe if the restless force inside him hadn't been driving him, he would have noticed the grassy bump ahead, but he didn't. At full speed, he hit it head-on. The vehicle soared into the air, and Ozzy was violently thrown off. He crashed hard, and from there, everything spiraled into chaos. His bodyguard, Sam Ruston, was the first to reach him. When Sam leaned over, he found Ozzy unconscious, not breathing. Without hesitation, Sam began CPR. After a tense moment, Ozzy gasped for air, but then stopped again. Sam refused to give up. Miraculously, he revived Ozzy just in time, then rushed him to the waiting medical team. Ozzy was airlifted to Wexham Park Hospital in Slough, west of London, and the news was grim. He had broken 8 ribs and his left collarbone. One of his cervical vertebrae, the bones in the neck region, was fractured. The broken ribs punctured his lungs, causing internal bleeding. Meanwhile, the collapsed collarbone crushed a major artery, cutting off blood flow to his left arm. The broken neck bone meant Ozzy wouldn't walk again without surgery. Doctors placed him in an induced coma and rushed him into emergency surgery to relieve the pressure on the artery and stop the lung bleeding. To stabilize his spine, surgeons inserted a metal rod into the fractured vertebrae. After 8 agonizing days, Ozzy woke up, but for the next 3 weeks, he was immobilized and able to film for the Osbournes or promote his duet with Kelly. Despite that, the song climbed the UK charts, marking Ozzy's first ever #1 hit. 3 weeks later, Ozzy stood on his feet again, but the real battle was just beginning. The metal rod in his spine caused relentless pain, and his mobility was severely limited. The man who once felt invincible was now painfully aware of his vulnerability. It was as if the devil himself was knocking at his door, ready to claim his soul. But Ozzy wasn't ready to surrender. This wouldn't be his first close call with death, and it certainly wouldn't be his last. In March 1982, Ozzy and his 25-year-old guitarist Randy Rhoads, freshly kicked out of Black Sabbath, were on tour. Sharon, Ozzy's wife, was traveling with them, and everything seemed normal. On March 19th, they stopped at a mansion, still aboard their tour bus. But not everyone was resting. Randy was outside, looking for some fun. Meanwhile, Ozzy and Sharon were asleep when Randy took a plane with 36-year-old pilot Andrew Walcock and 58-year-old hairdresser Rachel Youngblood. The trio soared through the sky in the small plane, repeatedly flying past the tour buses below. They completed 2 flybys without incident, but on the 3rd pass, Ozzy and Sharon were jolted awake by a deafening bang. Confused and alarmed, they heard Rudy Sarzo, their bassist, shouting, "Get off the bus!" They rushed outside and were met with a nightmare so devastating it haunted Ozzy for the rest of his life. The plane Randy was on had crashed, killing everyone aboard. Ozzy and Sharon had narrowly escaped death. The plane had flown right over their bus before crashing into the mansion. Randy had been more than just a guitarist to Ozzy. He had been a lifeline, helping to fight the darkness inside him, the devil that lurked beneath his wild exterior. When Randy died, that darkness consumed Ozzy completely, and it would be the force that ultimately claimed him on July 22, 2025. But before then, Ozzy came dangerously close to death, again in 2019. That year, Ozzy's past caught up with him with brutal force. In February, he was at home in Los Angeles, not by choice. Years of chain smoking had ravaged his lungs. Diagnosed with emphysema in the 2010s and suffering pneumonia in 2018, which forced him to cancel a European tour. Ozzy was battling serious respiratory problems. He was recovering at home when a simple misstep in the bathroom turned catastrophic. The fall was so severe that the metal rods implanted in his spine during the 2003 surgery were dislodged. But worse, his muscles detached from his skeletina. Pain. Ozzy is described as being stabbed repeatedly with a hot knife. The recovery was brutal. Between 2019 and 2023, Ozzy endured 7 spinal surgeries, culminating in a spinal fusion in June 2023. Despite the relentless medical battle, couldn't walk unaided anymore. He relied on a cane or at times a wheelchair. Tours had to be postponed, and depression settled in usually. When Ozzy sank into darkness, his inner demon threatened to take over. But by now, Ozzy had fought off those demons, or so he thought. His demons weren't supernatural forces from hell or some otherworldly realm. They were his addictions. A constant cocktail of substances coursed through him, started with blunts, and soon escalated to harder drugs. With fame came the belief that rock stars had to live fast and self-destruct. But the seeds of his downfall were sown long before stardom. Ozzy struggled in school not because of lack of effort, but due to ADHD and a learning difficulty that made reading a challenge. 15, frustrated and disillusioned, he dropped out. He bounced between odd jobs, including one at a slaughterhouse, where he found bizarre amusement slipping eyeballs into patrons' drinks at the bar. But after 18 months, a fight cost him that job. He even tried burglary. His first attempt ended with a TV crashing on him, and his second landed him in jail, abandoned by his father. After his release, his father helped guide him toward music, which led to the formation of Black Sabbath. But Ozzy's addiction quickly became a burden, causing him to miss shows and perform erratically. By 1979, the band had had enough and kicked him out. During this chaotic period, Ozzy spiraled deeper into addiction, bottles, drugs. In despair, it cost him dearly. His first wife left him unable to bear his destructive lifestyle, and he even assaulted her. Then Sharon appeared. She pulled Ozzy out of the abyss, helped reignite his career, and eventually became his wife. With her support, he found new bandmates and tried to stabilize his life, yet the struggle continued. He clashed with bandmates, sometimes so drunk he refused to perform. Things took a darker turn in 1989 when Ozzy faced a charge of attempted murder filed by none other than Sharon. During one of his infamous binges, Ozzy had tried to kill her. Shocked by his remorse, Sharon dropped the charges and encouraged him to seek rehab. Though Ozzy vowed to change and checked into rehab multiple times, addiction always pulled him back. Over time, the drugs and alcohol drained his vitality. They caused his Parkinson's diagnosis and contributed to the ATV accident that left him partially immobile. In the end, Ozzy fought to expel his darkness, but by then, it had already stolen his soul.